Before I did my engineering, I used to ask how the petrol runs a car, how we get a vehicle or car moving by simply using petrol. However, during the time of my mechanical engineering course, I learned that the concept of engine and vehicle is very, very complex. I was surprised on the fact that how this magnificent concept of engine and vehicle had been invented century years ago. This concept of engine and vehicle is really pure engineering. Today I will try to make you understand this concept of engine and vehicle in very simple way. Let us start.
To get a car or vehicle moving, the wheels of the vehicle should be rotating. Okay, so we have drawn two wheels here. Okay, so if we consider these are the two wheels of a vehicle. Okay, so let us consider these wheels are rear wheels. Okay, so we need the rotational movement of the wheel so that the vehicle will be moving. Okay, so as per the structure of the wheels, these two wheels are connected with the axle. So this wheel will be connected with one axle, the another wheel will be connected with the another axle. Okay, so these are axle. Okay, axle. So these two axle are connected with the wheels. Again, these two axles will be connected with the differential. Okay, differential. So we know that differential is a very important part of any chassis of a vehicle, because this differential is used to give the different amount of torques to the two wheels. Okay, so when basically we need the turning of the vehicle. Okay, so different amount of torques are needed for two wheels. This is the inner wheels, that one is outer wheel. So let us have the rotation motion of these wheels like this. Okay, and these two wheels will be connected by the propeller shaft. Okay, so this is the propeller shaft. Clear? So as per the structure of the vehicle, we are initially getting two wheels. Okay, so these two wheels are connected with the axle, and these two axles are connected with the differential. This differential is connected with the propeller shaft. Okay, using the universal joint. So this is the propeller shaft. Propeller shaft. Okay, propeller shaft. Clear? So we need to have the rotational motion of the propeller shaft, so that this rotational movement of the propeller shaft is transmitted to the differential, and from the differential the power will be transmitted to the axle. Okay, so this axle will be rotating when energy is transferred from propeller shaft to the axle. So once the axle is rotating, automatically the wheel which is connected to the axle will be rotating. So we'll have a rotational movement of the wheels when the axle will be rotating, and this rotational movement of axle will come from the propeller shaft when propeller shaft will be rotating. Okay, and now the most important concept is that the propeller shaft will be rotating by the energy transfer. Okay, so energy will be coming from the engine, which is called the heart of the vehicle. So from the engine the energy will be transferred to the propeller shaft, and that motion will be converted to the rotational movement of axle and finally wheels. Okay, so we have this propeller shaft rotating by using the power which is transmitted from the engine. Okay, through the different arrangement. So let us draw the engine now. Okay, so this is the engine. So engine is basically a cylinder like this. Okay, so this is the figure of cylinder, this is engine. So we know that this engine is the heart of the vehicle, because energy is generated in this engine, and this energy is transmitting to all the propeller shaft and other wheels by a different arrangement of other parts of the vehicle. So we understand the engine means this is a composition of a cylinder, piston, connecting rod, crank and crankshaft. Okay, so let us continue to have our engine ready. So let us draw the engine, which is consisting of a cylinder and then piston. So this is the piston, this piston is connected with the connecting rod, connecting rod, and this connecting rod is connected with the crank. So here the piston is connected with the connecting rod, and this connecting rod is connected with the crank, so that this movement of the crank is transferred to the crankshaft. So this crank is connected with the crankshaft. So this is a crankshaft. So this is our piston. This is connecting rod. Okay, this is the connecting rod, this is the piston, and this piston is connected with the crankshaft. This is the crankshaft. Okay, so we are getting simply the heart of the vehicle, which is called engine, and this engine is consisting of the very important parts, piston, and this piston is connected with the connecting rod, and this is a crank, and this crank is connected with the crankshaft. Okay, so these are the basic components of an engine. So what is happening here is very interestingly, this piston will have a reciprocating movement. Okay, so we'll have a reciprocating movement of the piston. The piston will move upward, and this piston will again move downward. Okay, so this piston will have a reciprocating movement, up and down, and this reciprocating movement of the piston will be transferred to the rotational movement of the crankshaft. Okay, by the arrangement of connecting rod and crank. Okay, so we are getting this reciprocating movement of the piston converted into the rotational movement of the crankshaft by using the crank and connecting rod. And now question is that how we'll get the reciprocating movement of the piston. Okay, so this is a very very important concept, that the reciprocating movement of the piston will be obtained from the combustion process. Okay, so the combustion process will have a basically 4 stages. Okay, so this engine will run through the different stages of combustion. Okay, so first stage or first process is suction. The suction will take place where during the suction the piston will move up downward. Okay, so during the suction, the air will come inside the engine. Then the piston will be compressing that particular air or fuel depending on the types of engine. So there are basically four stages, four stages: suction, compression, power stroke, and expansion. Okay, so through the different stages, different processes of combustion: suction process, compression process, power stroke, and exhaust, this piston will have a different reciprocating movement. So here the very important point is that we are getting the reciprocating movement of the piston by virtue of the different stages of combustion. So combustion is having four different stages: suction, then compression, and power stroke, finally exhaust. Through these four different processes or stages of combustion, this piston will have its upward movement, downward movement, again upward movement, downward movement, depending on the stages of the combustion. So once the piston will reciprocate, we'll have a rotating movement of the crankshaft. We will get the rotational movement of the crankshaft, which is connected with the piston by virtue of connecting rod and crank. Okay, so once we have a rotational movement of the crankshaft, this motion will be transmitted to the propeller shaft, then axle, then wheel. So here the very important fact is that the engine will function when combustion will take place, and due to the combustion of the fuel, okay, the piston will be moving upward and downward depending on the stages of combustion. Clear? So once the movement of piston will takes place, automatically that movement will be converted into the rotational movement of the crankshaft. Clear? So once the crankshaft will be rotating, that power will be transmitted to the propeller shaft, then to the axle, finally wheel. So we'll have a rotational movement of the wheel. In this way our vehicle will run. Okay, so this is a very interesting concept we are getting technically from the theory of a particular vehicle or engine. And if we move further, between this crankshaft and propeller shaft, there are some other parts. So you will have a clutch. This crankshaft will be connected with the clutch. So this is our clutch. So as we know that the function of clutch is to engage or disengage the engine from the transmission of the vehicle, because the function of clutch is to engage or disengage this engine or this crankshaft with the propeller shaft. Clear? So this is a clutch. So after clutch there will be gearbox. Clear? So this is the gearbox. Clear? So gearbox means it's a part of vehicle where different types of gears are mounted. So depending on the gear, the speed of the propeller shaft is regulated. So in the gearbox there are different pairs of gears, so that we have a different speed ratio. So the purpose of using gearbox here is to have a different speed ratio for the transmission purpose. Clear? Okay, now this gearbox is connected with the propeller shaft by using the universal joint. Clear? So this is universal joint, and this is also universal joint, UJ, universal joint. Okay, so finally we are getting the power transmission of an engine, where we have a the heart of the engine. Clear? Then this heart of the engine is connected with the crankshaft. This crankshaft is connected with the clutch, then gearbox, then we are having propeller shaft, then propeller shaft is connected with the a differential, and this propeller shaft is connected with the differential by virtue of universal joint. And here also this gearbox and propeller shaft are connected by using the universal joint. So these are two universal joint. This is also universal joint. So this universal joint are used to connect this propeller shaft with the differential and the gearbox. So finally we have a rotation of the wheel, rotational movement of the wheel, which is coming from the from the engine. So it is clearly understood that we have a vehicle running, okay, by rotational movement of the wheel. So once the wheel will rotate, our vehicle will rotate. So in brief, we can simply understand to have a vehicle moving, we need to rotate the wheels, okay, and this rotational movement of wheels will come from the axle. So here we have understood to get the vehicle or car moving, okay, we need to have these two wheels rotating. Clear? These two wheels will be rotated when axle will be rotating, and this axle will be rotating when we have a rotational movement of the propeller shaft. Clear? So propeller shaft will transmit its rotational power to the differential and then axle, and when the axle will rotate, the wheel will be automatically rotating. Clear? And now question is that we are getting the rotational movement of propeller shaft which is coming from the engine. Clear? So as per the structure of the engine, we are finding here that the very important parts of an engine are piston, cylinder, connecting rod, crank and crankshaft. So combustion will take place inside the engine, so that we have a reciprocating movement of the piston. So once we get the reciprocating movement of the piston by virtue of combustion of the fuel, this reciprocating movement will be converted into the rotational movement of the crankshaft. Okay, that means the reciprocating movement of the piston will be transferred to the rotational movement of the crankshaft, and this energy or power of the crankshaft will be transferred to the propeller shaft, okay, by using the clutch and gearbox. Clear? And once we have a rotational movement of the propeller shaft, we'll have a rotational movement of two axles and finally wheel. So once the wheels will rotate, automatically we have a moving vehicle. So in this theory of the engine and vehicle, we are getting the chemical energy of a fuel is converted into the mechanical energy. Okay, so whatever mechanical energy we are getting here in terms of the reciprocating movement of the piston, this energy is transferring to the crankshaft. Then this energy or power is transmitted to the propeller shaft by using the clutch and gearbox, and this energy or power is transmitted from propeller shaft to the axle, and then finally we have a wheel running. So in this way the vehicle is moving. So this is a very basic structure of a vehicle.
I hope that you have understood the concept of engine and vehicle, how the energy is produced inside the engine, and whatever energy is produced inside the engine, that energy is transmitted to the wheel by using different important parts of vehicles. So whatever energy or power is transmitted inside the engine, that power or energy is transmitted to the wheel by using different important arrangement of a vehicle. In this way the energy is transferred from engine to the wheel, and once the wheel starts moving, our vehicle will move. Therefore we have learned that the vehicles, be it a car, bus, truck and motorcycles, have engine, and due to the working of this engine the vehicles move. Now I want to keep one question for you. In the case of EV, electric vehicle, there is no engine. So my question is that since there is no engine in EV, how this electric vehicle moves? This is the question I want to keep for you all. Thank you so much. See you in the next video.